I absolutely could not find an existing firm out there that was really kind of promoting positive work environments for returners, career changers, women who need that kind of flexibility, the time to do caregiving. And so I was like, right, here we go. That's what I am. That's what I'm doing.
Welcome to another episode of Talk FS, the podcast for professionals in or entering the financial services industry. Today I'm joined by Danielle, who has over a decade of experience in financial services and has recently launched her own business, driven by a desire for greater flexibility, purpose, and a more people-focused approach. In this episode, we'll be discussing her journey from employment to business ownership, her mission to make financial advice more accessible and relatable. Danielle, thank you for joining me and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So I'm interested because I asked most of my guests in terms of their entry into financial services. For yourself, you actually had desire to enter financial services, which is so rare when we look at the
Especially
typical
for a
sort of,
16-year-old, eh?
sort of theme across those in financial services where they fall into it. What drew you to the industry?
Yeah, well, look, I don't think I've ever met anybody who ended up in industry, whether it was through falling in or intentionally kind of entering, that didn't have somebody already in doing the job that kind of made them aware of the role and made them kind of go, that's something I'd like to try. And for me, my uncle was a financial advisor when I was younger. It wasn't something as a family. Nobody particularly thought he had a fun job. Nobody thought he was like the cool, the uncle with the cool job. But I always really I was good with numbers. I was good with saving. I was the elder sister in a single mother household on the council estate. And I was the one that would do the saving and help my friends budget so that they could, save up for that CD that had come out. And that was very much kind of built into my character of something I liked doing and liked helping other people to do. So talking to my uncle and mum and, relatives as I was growing up, they were, you're good at maths, you could do accounting, and kind of dipped a toe in one of the studies. And it's like, no, this isn't for me. This is a lot. Like, I like a number, but this is a lot of numbers. This is a lot of kind of backdated stuff, sitting, looking at spreadsheets. So when do you get to speak to the people? My uncle was like, well, if you want to speak to people, you should come and, do some work experience with me. And I think that's where the light switch really went, because it was kind of like, there's the problem solving, the logic, the technical skills, the spreadsheets, which I love, but it's all interpersonal. It's all relationship built. There's the kind of the goal setting, the getting deeper with clients and individuals and understanding what's really important to them, being there for them when they're going through difficult life transitions. And that kind of paired with the technical side. Yeah, from 16, 17, I think is when I first did that experience with him. And it's like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Amazing. And talk me through what did you get up to on that work experience?
Oh, well, this was, as I say, over a decade ago. So there was a lot of schmoozing, a bit more schmoozing back then than there is these days. A nice lunch. But no, there was internal meetings between him and his technical team and understanding what the kind of the day-to-day looked like of actually onboarding clients, processing business. I spent time with each of those individually. I spent time with his assistant and front of house manager to understand, they're the ones greeting the clients, the first interface, first experience the client has of his business. This was them. So I kind of sat with them as well and kind of learned how they got into their jobs and what's important for their standards. As I say, I had a nice lunch and then shadowed him through some meetings as well. And again, this was quite a long time ago, so there wasn't as much of a focus on things like cash flow and things like that. But it was still very relationship focused, and you could really see start of the meeting to the end, kind of the shoulders drop, the smiles broaden. I just thought that was amazing.
Fantastic. So was it in that work experience you knew this is something I wanted them to pursue?
Yeah, absolutely. From then on, it was like, right, how do I get into here? How do I start? When can I start? Do I need a degree? Do I, all these kind of thoughts started swirling round, and started my mission from there, really.
Fantastic. And you mentioned in there that you recognised one of your strengths was maths, and also that you realised also you wanted quite client interaction alongside it as well. How would you view, now that you've been in the industry for many years, the need to balance the two scales, the technical end and the client relationship end?
Yeah, I would say, do you know what? I think it's shifted quite a bit through the years. I think as I've gone through the different roles over the years, my focus has always been very technical heavy. And I've always kind of been spoken to about exams. When you're doing that exam, right now I'm on to the next one. And, have you done this calculation before? It's very technical heavy. But once you kind of break through into the advisor role, I think all of a sudden that's kind of like, well, yeah, that's why you've got a really technical team around you, because you need to know enough to sense check the people that, are part of your team, and sense check what's being told to you and make sure that you can catch things. You're ultimately responsible. But it's not your job to sit there in a meeting and try and solve the problems. It's your job to sit there and listen. And I think the active listening, the probing questions, open questioning, that's a lot harder than some of the technical concepts that we kind of drilled in along the way. And I think the longer I've been advising now, very much the softer skills, the relationship building, that's, I think, very much outweighing the technical need.
Yeah, it is very interesting, isn't it? That transition. But I bet you're glad as an advisor now that you had that solid grounding in the
Yeah,
technical area.
absolutely. Yeah. Because, just being able to sense check things. And I think I'm hugely grateful now. Like now I'm a solo advisor. I've made it intentionally my mission to be in groups and kind of support networks with other solo advisors, other technical people as that sounding board, because it's hard to stay on top of all the technical knowledge and hard to make sure that you can't be an expert at everything. But it's that kind of like, right, I'm technical enough and I'm technical enough to know where I need extra support.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And it's definitely a theme we're seeing, is the rise of that profession, with it being particularly paraplanners. Is no, that's no longer just deemed as a stepping stone. It holds its very much own right as a profession in itself. And I totally agree. You've got to have both sides of the coin. You've got to have the technical end. You've got to have the relationship end. There's often people who can do both, but there's also nothing wrong with having someone very strong in one end, very strong in the other. Obviously, it's interesting for yourself as that solo advisor, and on your own journey of growing your own business, as to you have to wear many hats right now.
Yes.
So that
Many hats.
must be demanding, I guess, is possibly the best word for it right now.
It is. It is. And it can be a real struggle knowing when to take one hat off and put the next one on. Obviously, there are some hats I enjoy much more than others. I can't say I'm a huge fan of the social media or marketing side. And if something goes wrong on the website, I'm suddenly like, oh, explicit. I'm in the IT department now. So yeah, it's a real juggling act. And I think long term, it's not what I don't want to play every role long term. That's definitely not how I see myself thriving, but it's definitely a means to an end. And like I say, kind of knowing what your weaknesses are. And if you're not in a position to outsource it yet, just knowing other professionals that you kind of have that relationship with, where you can kind of be like, can I pick your brain for 10 minutes? Can I, luckily my husband's quite nifty on a website. Like, can I just get you to check my website for 20 minutes? And yeah, kind of building up that network of other experts.
Yeah, amazing. Well, certainly teaching you resilience along the way. And it definitely sounds like you have a high level of self-awareness, and even potentially from an early age as well, knowing the maths element, knowing you wanted to help people. Is that something that's highly needed to be able to grow the business in the right way?
It helps. I don't think it's something you need at outset, but I think if you don't have it at outset, you will along the way, because it's just trial by fire. Things go great, things go terribly. You have some weeks where you're on top of the world, and the next week you're pulling your hair out, I'm not doing enough. There's not enough here. That's gone wrong. Like, it's just a real journey. And I think if you're not quite conscious by the start of what you're good at and what you're not good at, you will be a few weeks, nay, a few months in. So yeah, I think I've always been quite self-reflective. And I mean, we'll see with time if that's going to bode me well or not, or if it's just going to make me an overthinker. But I think it does help with client interactions. If you can recognize something in yourself, it can help kind of trying to probe someone down, not to push them down a path, but to get them to open certain doors with their own reflection.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously for our audience listening, it contains many individuals wanting to enter or in the financial services industry. And so for anyone who's looking at the path of setting up their own business, definitely, you've got to be able to lean into the chaos and embrace it. And that's a fun thing in itself.
Yeah.
It's fun when it's over and the problem's sorted. But if you're put off by that, then yeah, maybe being a solo advisor or running your own business isn't quite for you. So I'm keen to understand, what was there a pivotal moment in your life or your career which prompted you to go on that journey to set up your own business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd always kind of said, oh, I'm going to work my way through the ranks, advise for a few years, maybe go self-employed advisor, but still kind of under somebody's arm. And then, when I'm kind of later on in my career, maybe early 50s, late 50s, I'll start my own thing and it'll be amazing and I'll have all this experience and it'll be great. So much freedom and control and really like all the rose tinted glasses of it. And yeah, so I had my little girl 2 years ago, my first child, and that was a real shake up, to be honest. It was, yeah, just like you say, a real pivotal moment. I kind of came back off maternity and, I was at a really good firm, really amazing people, very forward thinking, very kind of progressive, but it still wasn't quite as straightforward as I hoped coming back from maternity leave, and the flexibilities weren't as quite as easily accessible as I was hoping they would be. So that was kind of my moment where I was like, "Ugh, this is the creme de la creme of progressive advice firms. And I still am facing a battle here. Like so I looked, I was like, where are these flexible options? Where are these firms that are kind of promoting a really positive work environment, particularly for mothers returning from maternity leave? Because it's a unique situation, but it's not that unique, like lots and lots of women have babies, lots and lots of those women want to go back to work. And ultimately, we want more women in financial services. So it was kind of like, surely there must be some more firms out there that have seen that this is a real area of need. And I was at an event a few months back and somebody worded it really well. They said, eventually you get tired of knocking on doors that don't open, so you build your own house. And that was very much, very much what I did. So I absolutely could not find an existing firm out there that was really kind of promoting positive work environments for returners, career changers, women who need that kind of flexibility, the time to do caregiving. And so I was like, right, here we go. That's what I am. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. So you're in the process of building that house very much for yourself then?
Exactly. The foundations are laid. The walls are up. We're still working on the roof.
Amazing. So that really has changed your timescale then from, in your 50s, we'll utilize everything we know, build business, to now, much earlier than that and going for it. And when I've spoken to people before who've taken that leap of faith, particularly having children can often do that. Is it kind of a timing of it is now or not never, but it is now or for a long time kind of
Yeah.
approach?
Yeah, definitely. I think it would have been the easy route to just kind of say, right, the flexibility isn't there, or it's there, but it's not what I thought it was going to be. Take what you're being given, make do, pay the extra childcare fees, next few years, get through them, then she'll be in school, and then you can kind of look around and reassess. But it just didn't sit right. It just didn't feel like, when you feel like you're on the right path and everything feels right, not necessarily easy, but you just feel like you're on the right path. And I didn't have that feeling when I was thinking about that route. So for me, there wasn't a huge kind of way up. It was kind of like, that's an option. I'm not taking that. So what's the other option? And it didn't really kind of cross my mind for too long to just kind of put up and shut up. So yeah, it was very much now or not for at least a handful of years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good on you for taking that leap of faith, and good luck in the journey of doing the roof and everything else that comes with
We're
building
still
the
getting
house.
watertight. I'll let you know when we're watertight.
Stuff. And you mentioned as an industry, we need to get more women in financial advice. The gender balance isn't there as much as we would like, but fortunately, there is good progress being made. How important do you find it is to have relatable role models in the industry for others wanting to follow a path like yourself?
Huge, really huge. And do you know what? It wasn't until I was on a talk a few months ago with a few other women where we were discussing our different routes into our advice roles. And we were all coming from very different perspectives. And I didn't really realize how lucky I was until I was on that speaking to these other women, where one woman had maybe one female role model that she could kind of look to, the other had never had any. And I kind of look back and I've got at least a handful of, really strong women within industry that, I don't love every single aspect of every single thing that they've ever said or done, but they were strong, accomplished women that I can really draw a lot of lessons from. And then when I think about it, actually, I had a lot of really strong, really supportive male figures in my kind of professional life as well. And really kind of, like you say, fight in that good fight to get more women in these roles. So I definitely consider myself very lucky to have had those role models. And I do think it would be a lot harder without them.
Yeah. Definitely. And is that where you've had opportunity to work directly with those role models that spring to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, two of them have been advisors I worked directly with. One of them was director. I had another lady who was, again, another director of the firm. And yeah, like I couldn't ask for better role models, really. And the chance to have worked one on one with them was really, really important. And actually, I would say probably played a big part in my headstrongness to kind of say, like, of course I'm going to do that. I feel like, why can't I do that? Because I've seen people doing that. So why not me? And, I think without having those role models, if all you've ever seen is the kind of cliche, traditional old white man on the golf course, yeah, that's not how I work. That's not how I look. That's not how I connect to people. So how would I do it? Oh my God, like I could never think of a different way. So all of a sudden you can spiral and you've got to try and find solutions and things that aren't currently being done from nowhere. And it's a much harder kind of journey to plan for yourself.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's an area that I'm quite passionate about, really, in terms of, I think often people can undervalue or overlook the importance the right leader, the right mentor can have on someone's career. And if I put my recruitment hat on for a minute, I think, candidates so often get hung up on, the right salary, the right working arrangements, the right, progression path, that actually they always often seem to overlook, who am I going to be working for? What's the power that that person can have? Because often leaders, like, the legacy they can leave within someone can last years and decades. And you mentioned there you had really powerful mentors who gave you the confidence to go on this journey, yet they may never realized in the moment what they were doing, the seed that they planted and were watering. And I think that's so important when you're choosing your next position, is to really understand, who is it you're working for, they
Really.
what have they done, because
Yeah, I
it
know
can
I've
really
walked away
change
from
the path.
high paid roles because of work environment and who I was going to get to work with elsewhere for less money. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
it's not great. Sometimes you look back and go, should I have done that? But I think at the time when you weigh up pounds in your pocket versus pounds in your brain and kind of how much it's going to give you in the future, really picking somewhere that's going to nurture, support, and mentor you is so much more valuable.
And the confidence as well to go for it, because you can never put a price tag on that to go. And as you said, you're in that process of building it and stuff, but having enough confidence to take the leap of faith, knowing that there's still work to be done, and there'll always be work to be done, but having the ability to back yourself. And I'm intrigued to know, obviously, you've got the ability from a blank piece of paper to create your own business. What are you trying to do with your business that's, different, or what are you hoping to be known for?
Yeah. Well, I started with my three core missions. So my first mission is to try and help close the gender wealth gap. So work with more women to give them greater financial literacy and more money, basically make some women richer because not enough clients are female, but there are a lot of very successful, ambitious women out there. So I want to support more women to grow their wealth. I want to help confidence and literacy. So, one of the things I'm running is free financial workshops for women led businesses where I go in and actually speak to the team and employees and give them kind of the intro to investing and explain what their workplace pension is. So, that's really exciting. And then finally, to try and change some of the culture and improve numbers of women in financial services. And that's what that's a longer term mission as I try and build my business out to be that company that is a safe place for women starting, women coming in, career changers, returners, and kind of building that safe culture from day one with flexibilities in place for everyone.
Amazing. Well, I really do hope you manage to be successful in those three missions. They're great, and I love that sort of. Would that second mission almost be bordering financial coaching there? Then,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I include coaching client kind of as standard. So every client I work with, I offer monthly coaching sessions, cash flow for everyone. All of my charging is flat fee basis upfront. So I don't have any minimums in terms of like net worth or investments. Essentially, if someone comes to me, there's no am I rich enough? If you can afford my fee, which is sliding scale for complexity, then yes, absolutely, I can work with you. I can give you a full lifetime plan. And yeah, it's been really, really rewarding so far, really helping a like quite a spectrum of women from kind of just starting out, trying to kind of get out of a bit of a debt cycle to I'm getting divorced and I've got a few million that I need to invest and I don't know what to do. And kind of everyone in between, business owners, mums, divorcees, doctors. It's really exciting group to be immersed in and yeah, trying to make it accessible, trying to bring the behavioral coaching side into it as standard is a nice way to work.
yeah, definitely. And we've had previous guests who've very much looked at the financial coaching. So I've always been interested in that element of it, and it's one of those things. The more you probe into it, the deeper you dig. Actually, the more you become apparent as to that gap, like you said, and the need for people to address it.
Yeah. But even I think a lot of the time, a lot of kind of older school advisors, if they dug a little bit into it, they'd probably find a lot of the time they are doing at least elements of the coaching anyway. Very, very, very few advisors I've worked with over the last 12 years are just investment, just gains, just, a client calls up and they're worried about a dip, so I'm going to sell it all out. If a client calls panicking about a dip, they're going to talk to them, they're going to reassure them, they're going to work on the education. That's coaching. And that's such a huge part of our job to make sure that clients are making informed decisions and are aware of their biases, are aware of the emotional journey through the market. And that all comes into the coaching side.
Definitely. And is that where you see that transition where it's much more planning led now? It facilitates conversations of that nature far more regularly than previously, and people are doing stuff that they don't even realize that 10 years ago they wouldn't have covered.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's hard for new entrants to the market when there's so many different like wordings and phrasings from your wealth management, financial advice, financial planner. When you look at it, when you step back and it's like, well, it's all kind of the same job. It's more down to like your style and kind of what your belief system of the job are. And that's quite hard to get your head around when you're kind of new to industry or looking at job roles and you're like, they want a wealth manager, but I'm a financial planner and they're looking for an advisor. And it can be really complicated when actually you step back and just kind of be like, well, how do you want to work? And then that kind of pigeonholes you.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And actually, like that journey you went on, I know you ended up going down that journey and deciding I'm going to have to create it for myself. But
Yeah.
I do agree with you. You kind of need to map out, well, what does my ideal look like? And then approach companies and say, hey, this is what I'd love to do. And actually, you might be far more aligned than you realize. equally, you might not be, and you may have to make your own pivot, whatever that pivot may look like. But it does make sense, doesn't it? Go map out what your ideal, rather than trying to be someone else.
Yeah.
Can you
Instead of
be
trying
your
to
own
steer
person?
into someone else's.
And there might be a team that welcomes you with open arms.
Definitely. And if there's not yet, there will be. So
And you mentioned about the transition of the industry and over the past. Obviously, looking ahead, AI is a big part, and the evolution of that. What do you think will always remain human in the financial advice and planning journey?
there's been a lot of talk about this, and unsurprising, it comes up pretty every much conference at the moment. But I think after all that kind of chat, where I've settled is I think the relationships. I don't see the relationships changing over the short, medium term. I think I'm hopeful that what AI is going to do is bring in smoother processes, make the whole system a lot more systematized and profitable, and hopefully open doors to advisors working with lower income, lower net worth individuals and actually starting to close the advice gap a bit. That's what I'm hopeful for. That's what I think a lot of advisors I'm talking to are hopeful for. I know a lot of people are trying a lot of different softwares and systems and tools and agents and, from your Claudes to your Pennies to your Marlows and your Saturns. There's a lot of options out there at the minute. And I think everyone's in a trial everything zone. So I think it will still be a good few years before we see real time saving and real impact there. Across the board. I know there are a few individuals that are absolutely smashing it, are great with AI and tech and have really embedded that very quickly. But across the board, I think it's going to be a slightly slower rollout. Finance is still an old beast, and the regulation alone is going to take some some working with. So yeah, ultimately, I think it's going to be really positive. I think it's going to make businesses profitable and then open those doors up a bit wider. I don't think we're going to start seeing kind of roles disappearing. I think the administrator is still going to exist. The power planner is still going to exist. Those roles might adjust, they might change. Same with the advisor role. I think there's going to be an evolution, but I don't think we're going to be wiped out any day soon.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, I think the people element and the process element come before the technology. Bolting on technology is just going to increase whatever's there. Whether it's good, you can increase it, great. If it's bad processes, bad, wrong people in the business, it's just going to increase that as well and just increase the chaos. And so I think with what you're saying there, like there's a choice to be had as to whether it can help the advice gap with the efficiencies created, with the smoother ways of working. Businesses may choose to pursue the other end of the spectrum, but actually hopefully there'll be enough businesses out there that choose to use it for good and address the advice gap, because like you said, there's that large part of the UK population that just are underserved
And I
because
tried, I had the experience, I was ill recently and I had the experience with the GP where they've inputted all this new AI technology. So you can't just call to get an appointment. You've got to log on and fill in a form, and that form goes to a triage, which is assessed by an AI. And if you call them, you get sent to an AI receptionist. And I've spoken to about 5 different people at the same GP. Nobody wants to speak to the AI receptionist. Everyone's ended up upset and annoyed, because ultimately, if you've called to speak to the receptionist, you want to speak to a human. You don't want a robot that's going to just push you off to a different form and a different system and a different piece of software, especially when you're feeling unwell. And I think financial services, financial advice is different, obviously, but it's still, if my client is picking up the phone to call me because something has happened in their life and they get faced with an AI agent that's like, "Hi, I'm Charlotte, your AI receptionist," they are going to hang up faster than anything. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of streamlining it can do, but it should be in the back office. It should be, the client should feel the benefit. They shouldn't be interacting with them and seeing them and kind of witnessing that relationship
yeah,
more than hard.
clients will vote with their feet. You can't
Yeah,
really vote as to what GP you use, can you?
if
You're
I
quite
could.
limited in the UK with that. So you kind of got to get over it and get on with it. Whereas, like you said, if you had the choice and that was your advice business that you were a customer of, that may cause you to think twice about continuing to use them. So yeah, we've got to be careful not to over optimize here, because like you said, the relationship piece is still needed. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where the industry ends up and lands. And obviously for yourself, you're in that journey as well, building the business out and choosing what to, you know, bolt into the part of the process, whether it's technology or, processes. And I think we all just need to remain as open-minded as possible, because it's a new world we operate in now, isn't it?
It's exciting. It is exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. Well, it's been a real pleasure to learn about your career journey and the path you've ended up on through choice and also through sort of self-selection as well. For you, with wanting to get more women into the advice, is there any sort of messages or tips you would give to anyone contemplating it, or who's in the industry right now but wants to hear some words of wisdom at all?
Yeah. I think more than ever, it's becoming apparent to more and more people how strong a field this is for women. I think there's a huge gap, not just from the soft skills side and everyone bringing different things to the table, but there are clients that want to work with more women, and there's not enough women around for us all to work with them all. So there's a huge gap there. There's a huge demand. I think you were saying earlier about kind of if you're looking to enter and work somewhere, looking for those role models. I really, really recommend like going onto websites, looking at the team. If you can, speaking to the team. I've had lots of conversations with people kind of looking at joining companies that I've been at, and most people I think are really generous with their time and have quite a pay it forward mentality of we've all had help, we've had mentorship, we've had, tips and calls and coffees and things along the way. Drop someone a line on LinkedIn, ask for a virtual coffee, or, if you're local, catch up with them. Pick their brains, really kind of look at where you're going before you go there, because it's picking the right place can be like the best decision you ever make. And you'll be so supported and so nurtured and really grow. And there's so many skills that you can grow in this role beyond the obvious. And it's really rewarding. But it is harder if you're at somewhere where you don't feel those things. And it's hard to make those decisions of leaving. And it's hard to make the decisions to start your own thing. And, it's not impossible. Obviously, you can do it. Hopefully, if anybody is on that cusp, feel free to message me and see if I can give you any tidbits or words of wisdom. But I think it's all possible, but just go into your decisions with as much information as you can. Because best case, it's an amazing job that I recommend to more people than take me up on it. So
Amazing. Well, that's really powerful advice there. And I totally agree with you, reaching out to those, people at a firm that you've shortlisted as a viable option. So yeah, really appreciate your time today. We'll make sure there's links to sort of your pages in the description below. I'm excited to watch your journey of you building out the business and the house. And
I'll let you know when we're watertight and come back on and share the success in a few years' time.
yeah, well, it might not be a few years. You're growing at a pace. So yeah, exciting time ahead for you. So yeah, thank you again for joining us. And for those listening, I really hope you enjoyed this episode and obviously some amazing bits of insight shared today.